Corn School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. Here today for a Corn School with Jeanette Gaultier of BASF. You're a technical service specialist, and we're going to be talking about how to manage volunteer corn with herbicide-resistant traits. So let's just open up that topic a little bit. Tell me a little bit about why this is an issue and what growers can do to manage it.
Yeah, volunteer corn, not something we often think about too much across the West, but we definitely, when it is an issue, you can't miss it because corn obviously grows up to be quite a bit taller than the rest of our crops. And so it can be an issue, so managing volunteer corn in the next crop is important. Some of our crops are pretty competitive, and the chemistries that we use lend themselves well to managing corn. But I think what we're starting to see too is a lot of different herbicide traits and different trait platforms across crops, including corn, but also soybeans as well. And so really together, that might mean that you have to take a second look at what those traits are and if your current management plan is still going to work in the future. So one of the things that we have seen coming down the pipeline is there will be some corn that actually does have some tolerance to one of our Group 1 chemistries, Assure or Quizalofop, and that's really our go-to when it comes to corn control. So with that tolerance in there, we're going to have to start looking to some other Group 1 chemistries, and that would be Centurion or clethodim. And there's just some things to know there. So again, you know, if we are going into a canola crop, we often find that clethodim can work quite well on corn when it's small. Right. The reason why we tend to lean on Assure or Quizalofop is that it just is stronger, especially as corn gets larger. So it is something to keep in mind when we are in soybeans and we do have those corn volunteers. You know, that glyphosate's not going to get, and then some of our other chemistries now that we have traded in both soybeans and corn, you might be looking at pulling in that clethodim to manage your corn. So I think the take-home message really is look at your traits in your corn, look at your traits in your soybeans, in your other crops, and then just make sure if you do have to switch to clethodim to manage volunteer corn, making sure that you are probably tackling it before 5-leaf.
If growers are seeing that there is corn coming up and they're growing another crop, is there anything that they should be considering when they're looking to maybe switch up herbicides?
So we know Group 1s are the go-to. You can use other things to manage volunteer corn, but when we're specifically looking at something like Assure or Quizalofop, we know it's the corn killer. You can get some pretty big corn. Of course, smaller corn is easier, but again, if you do notice that corn, if we do get some heat, it's going to grow fast, and so I think that's why it's a popular choice. If we do have to make that switch to some other chemistry like clethodim, for example, paying attention to staging is going to be really important. So we've got some pretty small corn here. Anything, even some Group 2s will work on this well. But again, if we are going to make that switch, we probably want to make sure that we're targeting corn that's 5-leaf and smaller for that application. Whereas we know that even though Assure's labeled up to 6-leaf, it can take down some pretty big corn.
Right. How much of a important part would rotation play, and would you want to maybe plan your rotation so that you could manage for volunteer corn if you're experiencing those issues?
I think it depends where you are. Manitoba is always a little bit funny. I think in other parts of the West, you know, having corn in the rotation is pretty simple because, yeah, we do have a lot of herbicide options across our crop rotations. But really when we're in the east side of Manitoba, corn and soybeans really are king. So we tend to be a little bit more like Ontario that way. And so again, a lot of trait platforms. So just making sure that the trait platform or the corn or soybeans that you've selected you know, that you can use certain products and that those products are going to continue to help manage the crop from last year.
Fantastic. And any words of encouragement for producers in this growing season? We got corn just popping out of the ground here.
I was going to say, corn looks a little stressed, but I think we just need a little bit of warmth, so come on, sun.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And that was Jeanette Gaultier on Real Agriculture.